Today we're going to do something together that I've wanted to do for a little while now. Replace the tubes in this amplifier. Roll the tubes. You ever roll tubes before?
What?
Oh, come on. You gotta roll the tubes every once in a while. I've got new tubes. I've got an old amplifier. So you stay right there while I go get my voltmeter. Hi, I'm Bob, and you, my friends, are back in the United States of Analog. I'm glad you're here. How you doing? Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for asking. Please let me know where you're from in the comments. You know, I think this is going to be the video that's going to put me above 20,000 subs. Finally, it's been a year and a half, and I can't wait to get my YouTube plaque for 20,000 subs. It's going to be fantastic. You can make that happen. Do all that YouTube stuff that you do so well. Now kick back and enjoy the video I'm going to present to you as we're going to roll some tubes. Tube amplifiers. Some people love them. Some people don't love them. Some people have both in their home. I'm one of those people. I don't hate tube amplifiers. Yes, they can be too warm. The bass can be rolled off. And the highs can be a little less than exciting. I still love my Jolida 202A from circa, 1994 or something like that. I think I bought this. And look at it. It's still in great condition. This thing is a tank. It's like the Cartier tank of amplifiers. Look at this, kind of a Art Deco kind of look. These giant transformers and the printing on top and the simplicity of this thing always just caught my eye, even if it hasn't always caught my ear. Hey, that's pretty clever. Hey, I gotta write that down. So I remember the day I met my first tube amplifier. Like most Saturdays, I was just being a nuisance in an audio store. I was in a repair shop that also sold used gear in Austin, Texas. When I walked in the door, I saw this amplifier that I'd never seen before. I can't remember if it was a Fisher or a Scott. It was one of those two brands, but I remember when I walked in, I heard this super smooth sound coming out of these large Advent speakers, also from the 70s. So it was kind of a 60s, 70s system with a turntable, you know, with vinyl. And the owner of the shop was playing some classical music. You know what? It sounded pretty good to me. I remember thinking at that time, oh, this is like a Sunday morning system. You know, when you get back from church and you want to listen to some music, but you don't want to get super hyped up and excited. You just want something smooth, something warm, something that's just kind of like a Sunday system. That's the vibe I got from the sound I was hearing. Was it ultra clear? No. Did it have extended bass? No. But there was something about it that was so inviting. I stored that information in the back of my brain. I went on to get those large Advents, which I still have upstairs. I re-grilled them and everything, and they're super cool. I'll always have them. But it wasn't until about 5 years later that I picked up this Jolida 202. I think it's the 202A. It's the first generation, 40 watts a channel into 8 ohms. I'll run down the features and the layout in just a second. But it cost me, I don't know, I looked online and it said in the day these things went for like $650, $750, but I don't think I would have paid that much. I think I was in that $500 to $600 range on this. Maybe the dude cut me a deal at the hi-fi shop, but you know, I've had this in my collection for so long, and I've been using it back here as kind of a second amplifier here in Strummer, the Jazz Kisa, which I built. And yeah, a tube amp like this is really nice for jazz. It's really nice for classical, for vocals, female vocals. Is it gonna rock Led Zeppelin like you think it's gonna? No, it's probably not. You know, it's not gonna do it any favors, but it can be used. Now, this is an amplifier for people who love music first and love gear second. You just set it and forget it and let it go and just enjoy those smooth sounds. I will say with something like this at 40 watts a channel, you're probably going to want to hook this up to some very efficient speakers. And for years, I've had them connected to my Heresy 3s, my anniversary edition from Klipsch. I also had some horn speakers from the horn shop that were custom built for me back in the 90s. This thing tore those up, tore them up, but placement was kind of funky with those. They had to be in corners. They just had a small, like 3-inch full-range Fostex driver in them. I'll see if I can dig up a picture on the internet. They're in storage right now.
Yeah, I have a storage unit for gear now.
All right, so the tubes I'm going to roll here, and by roll I mean replace these tubes with, are from a company called Psvane. Psvane. They were kind enough to send me some new tubes for review. Let's just dig in. Let's open them up. Oh man, there's something about opening new tubes that's so exciting. Or you know what, let me get I don't like to handle them with my fingers. Let me get a cloth handy, a microfiber cloth handy, and see what we've got here. Oh yeah, these are nice. These are nice. Yeah, check this out. Again, the classic series from a Chinese company called Psvane. But I think these are going to be a good match. And speaking of match, if you don't know a lot about tubes, and I don't, I'm no tube expert, but I know tubes like a good relationship. You've got to have a good match. Make sure whenever you buy tubes from any kind of manufacturer or on Amazon or a company that you're getting matched pairs, matched quads or whatever, matched sets of tubes, because, you know, you want the output of the tubes to be equal across the board. Now, one of the things we're going to have to do today, because this is not one of those fancy like Prima Luna self-biasing amplifiers, I'm going to have to set this thing on its head, turn it on, and bias this thing on my own with my limited abilities. I know nothing about electronics. I'm not even sure I know how to use a voltmeter, but I've got the instructions. We've got to bias this thing manually. You have to do it every few months or so to keep all the levels straight. My hopes in this whole experiment is that these Psvane tubes will just give me that sweetness, maybe a little more bass, and a little more of that high-end, what I call excitement, which is not exactly an audiophile term, but I'm going to use it. Maybe just give me a little more of everything. That's the goal. So before we start pulling the tubes out, let me tell you a little more about this Jolida 202 from the 90s. On the front, you just have a power switch and a power LED, volume knob, and a selector switch for tuner, tape, CD, and auxiliary. There is no internal phono preamp. For power, there are 4 EL34 tubes, and the preamp section has two 12AT7s, two 12AX7s.
Nailed it.
Yeah, there's other designations they go by as well. Now on the back, more simplicity. We have RCA inputs. There are speaker taps for 4 ohm and 8 ohm connections. Sometimes it's nice just every once in a while to try the 4 ohm just to see if you get better sound. Sometimes you do. There's a fuse. I've never had to replace it. AC power connection. Of course, the power supply is inside. That's pretty much it. No subwoofer output, and that's a big disappointment. But you know what? Back in the day, I don't remember many people talking about subwoofers. It wasn't really as prevalent as it is now. All right, let's start removing the tubes, and just a little bit of wiggle and a little bit of force. You don't want to use too much. You don't want to bend those pins. There you go. They come out just like that, and give them a nice good rub down here. Clean them off, because you might want to use them later. You know, it's not unusual for tube amp owners to have several different sets of tubes to get different sounds out of their amplifier. So we don't want to damage them, and we want to store them for a rainy day. All right, let's find a quiet spot somewhere in the house where I can set this thing on its head, roll the tubes, get this thing biased, and then we'll give it a listen. Now, as I may have mentioned early on in the video, a lot of the tube amps these days have automatic biasing, or biasing with a flick of a switch. This is 90s technology. We have to do it manually, but I think it's a pretty easy process. We've got our voltmeter, I've been calling it. I guess technically it's a multimeter, but we're going to set this for 200 millivolts. We've got these contacts here labeled 78043. The 0 will be for the black lead of the multimeter, and 7, 8, 4, and 3 refer to the 4 preamp tubes. Right here, V7, V8, V4, V3, these are little screw terminals here, and this is where we're going to make the very fine adjustments. So other than multimeter, all you need is a small screwdriver. I'm going to set the multimeter down here where I can see it. I'm going to grab the leads, and let's get busy biasing this. Our goal is to dial in 40 millivolts for each tube. Black goes into 0, red goes into 7 for the first tube. I'm at actually 39 right now. I'm gonna see if I can get it to 40. This is very sensitive work here, not very big turns. There we go, we're at 44. Now I gotta dial it back. 40.1. I'm gonna take that. Now I'm gonna move over one slot to the 8. Very close again. I'm around 35, and start twisting like we did last summer. It's going back and forth between 39.9 and 40 right now. There we go, 40.5. And the final preamp tube moving over to slot number 3. This is actually at 39 right now. 40.1. I think we're biased. I think we're biased. I know being biased isn't a good thing, but I think it's a good thing for an amplifier. I'm going to turn off the power because these tubes are getting hot and it's all radiating up here. But this is now biased. I'm going to get it into the system. We're going to give it a listening test. You should give tubes some burn-in period. We're going to get some initial impressions of these Psvane tubes in the system. I hope they breathe new life into my Jolida. All right, I've been listening all afternoon to the Jolida from the 1990s with the brand new Psvane Horizon Series tubes. I think that's the correct nomenclature. And when I looked online, I totaled up the price. It came in just under $300 for the set of 8 tubes. That's not bad to keep the Jolida sounding great for the next decade or two. I think that's a pretty sound investment. And speaking of sound, let's talk about it. 3 records I used for my test. Van Halen's 5150. We got Kenny Burrell. We're going to go jazz here. Little Kenny Burrell Midnight Blue. 45 RPM Fleetwood Mac Rumors. Let's start with the Van Halen. Mixed results with the new tubes. I don't really blame the tubes per se because the Heresy 3s, which I'm playing the Jolida on, not known for their, crazy bass extension. And again, the Jolida doesn't have a subwoofer output. So that's kind of a little bit of an issue. I think I can solve some of that stuff by getting my Waxwing back into the chain, that DSP phono preamp that I love so much, and adding a little bit of bass. This was on the edge of edgy, as it were, and I think that's partly due to the recording as well. And as I mentioned, tube amplifiers in general, not so great with like really active rock, really, hard rock. And I think that's what was proven out here. There were some trade-offs. While there wasn't a lot of bass extension, I was encouraged because I was getting some of that trade-off that I was looking for. I wanted a little more excitement in the high end. I wanted a little more detail. And man, did the Psvane tubes give that to me with this Van Halen record. The separation was so good. The soundstage got so much wider. The Jolida with the Jolida power tubes, and I swapped out for some JJ preamp tubes a few years back. That whole setup seemed to me to sound kind of mono. I really wasn't, again, I was listening to the music, really wasn't listening to the gear. But now that I have the Psvane tubes in here, the nice clear glass, clear sound, light up bright, I started noticing more audiophile traits. And just to make sure this wasn't some kind of audiophile miscue, I decided to bring out a record that I know sounds fantastic. This Fleetwood Mac, cut at 45 on 2 discs, is an amazing record. And you know what? It was completely different than the Van Halen record, and probably rightly so because it was recorded different. On secondhand news, I think Lindsey Buckingham is playing a 12-string, and I was hearing that thing just emerge like I'd never heard it before. Certainly never heard that detail on this Jolida before. And the vocals, everything coming through like it was meant to. And again, that super wide soundstage that I never heard in my Jolida before. And then I had to jazz it up with Kenny Burrell, Midnight Blue, Chitlins Con Carne. Stevie Ray Vaughan covered it. Told you that before. Stevie Ray was influenced greatly by Kenny Burrell. I don't know if they ever met. This is a great record, and I noticed the horns popping. The guitar was so detailed, so full, so rich. I was pretty happy with that sound. Now remember, these tubes aren't even burned in yet. They've only been running for 2 or 3 hours now. And I think these Psvane Horizon tubes, once they get a little more time on them, are going to get sweeter and sweeter and sweeter, and everything is just gonna come out just right. I think some of those bright highs that I was hearing, but only on the Van Halen record, I think those will get subdued, and I think a little more warmth is going to come back in, but you know what? I didn't mind the detail at all. But my Jolida with the previous tubes was way too warm. Too much warm and not enough dynamic energy. Can I say that? I don't even know. There was not enough and there was not enough
Dynamic energy. Can I say that? I don't even know.
I can't wait to start dialing in these tubes, and I can't wait for you to join me again in the United States of Analog. I got one more video to show you today. The geniuses at YouTube have already selected a video that, well, it's going to pop up right here, and they think you should see it, and you know what? I think you should too. Oh, there it is. Hey, look, it's another analog product. I hope, anyway. We'll see you next time in the United States of Analog.